In this session, we're going to look at VLOOKUPs. This is one of the most powerful and useful functions within Excel when working with data. Now, most people, when they use the VLOOKUP function, they'll use it, they'll kind of enter in their data, click the enter button and hope and pray for the best, because it can be quite a complex function when you don't know what you're doing. So we'll just be giving an introduction to the VLOOKUP statement and how it works. So first of all, we'll just build some data. So let's just build some data, and let's start with employee. So we're going to go with employee, and here what we're going to do is we're going to give it employee, and we'll put number. Okay, so we're going to give an employee number. Great, and then we're going to give the name, we can give surname, and then we're going to give a code. So we're going to give some sort of a code to the employee, and we're going to keep the table quite simple for now. So our employee number, let's just put in there. First we'll put our names in. So we'll keep the table quite simple. Let's put some names, let's put some surnames in, and a code. So let's put a name, we're going to go with John, Baldwin, Tracy, Chapman, Lisa, Morgan, Pratik, Shah, and Joe Chang. So just some names we've come up with, and what we're going to do is we're going to give them an employee number, so we can just go 1, 2, 3, and drag that down. Okay, so now we're going to give them some sort of a code, or let's say that these employees are, there's various types of employees we could have. For example, they could be full-time, they might be part-time, they could be, let's say, contract, we'll say not employed. So these are the different things that our employees could be. And what we'll do is we'll give them codes. So we're going to go FT is full-time, PT is part-time, C is contract, NE is not employed. So these are the various codes that apply to our employees. So we might go, well, John Baldwin, we know that he is a contractor, Tracy is not employed anymore, Lisa is full-time, Pratik is full-time, and Joe is part-time. Okay, so these are our codes. And we may use codes because it's much easier to enter in for our data. We can move this table. Let's just Control X just to get rid of it. Control X to cut it, and Control V to paste it here. So sheet 1, why don't we label this sheet? We'll call this employees. And sheet 2, we're going to call this one reference. So this is our reference sheet. Now, if we look at this, we can just maybe tidy some of this up. Let's make this bold. Okay, we just put little nice grid lines around it. Again, we would have covered so many other aspects of Excel, but here we're just talking about VLOOKUPs. So these are just some small amount of data. And here I've got the code for them, the employee code. But what if I wanted to find out what that employee code mapped to? Yeah, there's no linking here going on in the cells at the moment. I've got this reference table here. Again, let's put a little border around it. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to, from here, find out exactly what FT stood for or PT stood for in my table. Well, this is where I would use the VLOOKUP. So here I could type another column. Let's go status. So this is my status, and here I'd like Excel to go and find out what does C stand for in my reference table. Now imagine this was a huge table. Here I've done it very simply just to show you so that you can keep up with this example and type as I go along. So let's think about the status. What do I need? Well, Excel, or the VLOOKUP function within Excel, is a bit like a helping hand. Yeah, it's your assistant. Let's say you ask your assistant, say, right, I don't know what the code C stands for. Could you go and find out what C actually stands for? Well, that's where VLOOKUP comes into play. And here it's given us options. So VLOOKUP, look up value. So your assistant would ask you, say, right, okay, you want to know what C stands for. So that's the first thing you need to tell your assistant. F5 or code, the code column, is what I'm looking for you to go and find. I want you to go and find F5. Okay, so find F5, that's the lookup value. Then your assistant says, well, where would I go and find F5 or this code C? Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring us here to the insert function or function arguments screen. And this just helps us. We access it by clicking the FX button here. So let's just have a look at it. Lookup value F5. I want you to go and find, and here it nicely shows you C. That's what your assistant or VLOOKUP is going to go and find. So you ask your assistant, go and find C and bring me back what C relates to. And your assistant says, okay, well, where do you want me to go and find it? Well, this is where we say the table array. So we then have to click, we can find the table array. Let's go to our table array here. We select it. Okay, and let's come back. We can click back here. So we've told our assistant, go and look in this table and find what C corresponds to. And our assistant needs some help. They're like, okay, well, let's say in that table, which column would you like me to return from? Because if we look at our table here, we've only got 2 columns. And it's quite obvious which one we want to return. But what if there were 3, 4, 5, 6 columns? What if there were lots of other columns? Okay, which column would you like me to bring back? So we just need to tell Excel that I want you to bring back this column here. But this time we don't select the column. So we'll go back here. What we do is we actually put in a number. So we say go to the second column in the table. Yeah. So we're saying go to the second column, and then finally the last input. Now if we look here, all of these inputs are in bold. So lookup value, table array, column index number. They are in bold because they are what we call required. We need them. Yeah, there's no way we can ever have our function work without these. This one here is non-bolded, range lookup. When it's in non-bold, it means it's an optional variable. You don't have to send it. If you don't send it, Excel may assume some things. And let's have a look what it assumes. It says, looks for a value in the leftmost column of the table and then returns a value in the same row from a column you specify. By default, the table must be sorted in ascending order. So that defines the VLOOKUP. Yep. And then it says range lookup is a logical value. To find the closest match in the column, sorted in ascending order equals true or omitted. Find an exact match equals false. Well, do we want the closest match? No, not really. We don't want that. We want an exact match. So here we're going to put in false. Okay, so now most people get this wrong. They don't know what to put in there. They might just leave it blank because they don't know. If you leave it blank, it will be true if omitted. So it says true or omitted. So if you don't put it in, then it will assume true. It will assume you want to find the closest match when we want the exact match. So we're going to put false in there. So I'll summarize again what we're doing. Lookup value, we're sending our assistant, we're saying, right, okay, what do you want me to find? Well, I want you to find C, yeah, in this case, or F5. I want you to find F5, here it says C. Where do you want me to find it? Well, I want you to find it in this array here, in this table array. So we select the whole table. Which column do you want me to look? So once I've found C, or once I've found the value you're looking for in that table, which column do you want me to return? Which column corresponds to that? And we said, well, we want you to return 2, and we want you to find an exact match. So let's see if it's worked. Hopefully, we don't need to fingers crossed and hope and pray. Right, so contract, let's just drag that down. Now, we've got an error. We've got some errors here. Why is that? Hopefully, you should know because we would have covered this before. We need to make this first formula an absolute reference. So here, when we're referencing the data, we need to make it an absolute reference. So let's just F4 that. That's to put the dollar signs in front. So we're going to make that an absolute reference. Press return. There we go. So does it look right? Now we made some easy codes. NE was not employed. FT was full-time. FT was full-time. PT was part-time. Great. So it looks like it's worked. Yeah. Our VLOOKUP is nice and easy. Now you're probably looking at that thinking, well, yeah, it was really easy when you did it, and great, I can do it. But sometimes I've come up with problems. What are those problems? Well, the number one problem is people generally don't know how to use this false command. If we leave it as blank or leave it as true, it won't work for discrete data. When we're looking for discrete items, it won't work. Where we can use the true is when we're looking for, where we say continuous data. We might be looking at ratings, etc. Or looking within a range for a number. So that's where we'd use the true. And we'll cover that another time. But for now, we're just going to stick with a basic VLOOKUP. And here, we want this to be false when we're working with discrete data. Okay, so that's the first mistake. The second mistake is when we're thinking about our reference data. Let's just add some data here. So we're going to go code, we're going to go meaning, we'll then add another one, and we'll put in pay. So here we're going to put in, everyone gets paid differently. So full-time, they get paid monthly. We can go part-time, they get paid weekly. Contract, get paid monthly. And not employed, we can put in not paid. Let's just tidy that up so we can see it's all one table. Now that shouldn't affect my VLOOKUP. Yep, it's not affecting my VLOOKUP at all. I've just added some data into my table. Okay, so I've added code, I've added pay. The other thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add another column here. Again, I'm just going to call it a number here. We're just going to give these some numbers. And let's say I want to add another one here. I want to give it a number. We'll just tidy this up. And we're going to call this, let's start backwards this time. We're going to give this one a 4. We're going to give this one a 3. We're going to give it a 2. We're going to give it a 1. And this is the number or priority. So what we'll do is we're going to go here. We're going to go number / priority. Yep, for various things that we might have. So number or priority. And let's say, for example, now this is how we've set up our table, and I want to pull out whether they're paid monthly, weekly, or not paid. So let's go back to our data. So we're going to go, when are they paid? So we might want to see, when are these people paid? We've got a reference data. So the only thing we've ever added are the code, and then using our functions we can work out all the rest. So we're going to work out when are they paid. So let's work out when are they paid. How would we do it again? See if you can do it. I'm going to do it, but you can always stop the video, see if you can do it. So equals VLOOKUP. Okay, lookup value. What value am I looking up? Again, I'm going to look up the code. Where am I going to look up? So let's click FX. Let's go to our table. So I'm going to go to our table. We want to look at our table. So the table array, this is where we want to go. So I'm going to look up in this table here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the bit of the table I'm interested. Yeah, so I'm not interested in this number priority. I'm just going to select this table here. Okay, and let's F4 it. Let's make it absolute. Yeah, we should have covered that. Column index number. So again, to my system, they're going to ask me now, well, you've got this table here. Here's the code. This is the table that you've selected. Remember, I didn't select this in my table here. I've gone D3 to F7. And I'm saying, what column would you like to return in this table? So I want not 1, not 2, but 3, the pay column. So I will say in here, column index, I will type 3. I want the third column. This isn't a reference point, it's the third column. Range lookup, remember we want to make this false because we're saying we want the exact match. And let's click OK. So paid monthly, not paid monthly, weekly, let's look, is that right? So let's just go back to our table, we can check that. Contracts are paid monthly. Yeah, contracts are paid monthly. Full-time is paid monthly. Yeah, we can see that. We've kept it quite simple, so it's easy for us to check. Part-time are paid weekly. And there you go on, not employed is not paid. Well, that makes sense. Great, so we've got that. Again, let's just put it in line with our table. Now the final one, let's say if I wanted to work out their priority. Okay, so I want to work out their priority. Now this is another mistake that people make, or the common mistake in VLOOKUP. We're going to get this to work. Unfortunately, we'll come across a problem. So we're going to equals VLOOKUP. Right, lookup value. Let's click FX again. So we want to lookup value is Right, well, what do we want to look up? Let's have a look at our table. Again, we're going to look up the code because that's what we entered. Table array, so where should I go and find this data? Well, I'm going to ask my assistant to go and find this data for me. Yeah, the whole table. Let's select the whole table this time. Okay, and column index number, what would you like to return? Number 1 here. If I go to my reference, I want to return the number or priority. Let's say, so I want to return number or priority. So I'll go 1. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to return in column 1. Yeah. Range lookup, again, we want an absolute match. We want a complete match. Right. Now that should work. If I look at that, right, let me just, I'll convince those people that I'm not sure, think I've done something wrong. Let's just absolute reference that table. It still is coming up as NA, so it's going look up there in this table. I want to return the first column, and I want an exact match. We saw it worked before. Why isn't it working now? Okay, it's got an error. It's probably something I've just typed there. Okay, let's just do that. It's not working. Right, now to explain the reason why it's not working, this is a common mistake people make. When I'm looking for my reference data, when I'm sending my assistant VLOOKUP, yeah, like I would send my assistant, go and find me this value in a table and then bring me back a corresponding value in that row. So let's say in the first example we sent it, this code, we've said go and find F5 in this table. So we go to this table, find F5. This is our table that we selected. Right, where is it? So we look in the table, we try and find it. And here it is. We find it. It's in C. Yeah, it's in this column here. Now we said find what would you like to return? Well, we want to return this. We want to return the number or the priority. If we come back to our function, we told our function here column index number. Here I can show you here. 1. So return column 1. That's what I want you to return. So let's have a look. Return column 1. It's quite straightforward. It should work. Yeah, we told us to find C and then return column 1. But the problem is our assistant or VLOOKUP is clever, but it's not that clever. It can only work going from left to right. Yeah, so it can only work from going left to right. It can't go backwards in VLOOKUP's mind or in Excel's mind. So we have to be very careful when we're creating our VLOOKUP. The code that we're looking for has to be in the leftmost column of our table array. So if I moved this around, if I took this and put it on the end of my table, so let's say I put it at the end of my table, now tried my VLOOKUP, okay, now I need to change it here. So let's have a look at our table array. We're going, so table array, has that changed? Yes, it has. So let's just change that. We're going to keep it. So that's the table I'm looking in. Make sure you've got it right. You know, it will keep the previous reference. So we're going to get rid of that. Again, let's F4 that. Let's absolute reference that. Okay, so there's our table array. We're happy with that. Yep, you can see it there. Now the column index. What column index is it? Well, if I can go back, have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 4th one. Remember, you just want the number 4 in here. That's it. No other references. Again, range lookup is false because we want an exact match. Let's click OK. So, great. We can see the priority is 2, 1, 4, 4, 3. Yeah. And let's say we decide, so let's just do that. Let's say we decide in our reference table, we don't want, this isn't great. Actually, we want to change this. We want high, we want medium, we want low, and we want NA. Yeah, we changed it. We don't want numbers. The beauty of it is all we do is change this reference table, and it should update. There we go. It updates our data table. So we've got John, yeah, he's a contract, so he's low priority. Tracy is not employed, so it's NA. Lisa, full-time, high. Joe's part-time, so it's medium. That's the beauty of using a reference table that have codes in it. Yeah. Our data table, we don't need to do any updating there. It will automatically update our data table. Great, so that is VLOOKUPs. So in terms of errors, we said the errors, the biggest one is not using true and false correctly or omitting that last optional variable. The other is not setting our reference table up correctly. The code that we're looking for, or our search value, has to be in the leftmost column of the table. Okay, so that's the second most popular mistake. And well, this mistake, it varies where it is, but it's a big one. Generally what happens is, if I'm looking for this code here, let's say for example, I want to find C in this table here, yeah, or I'd like to find NE in this table here. A mistake that often happens is when people enter this data, they may enter it incorrectly. So for example, if I didn't put C in, but I put C space, and I press return, look, suddenly I've got hash NAs. But when I look at it, I go, well, C should work. You know, I've got C in my VLOOKUP, here it is, that should work, it should return contract, but it's not working. If you get this and you've looked at your VLOOKUP and it seems to work, what I would do is I would check my data. See, is my data correct or not? Have a look. Has someone entered it incorrectly? I've got C space. Once I clear that out, I've just got C. It works perfectly. Great. So those are our VLOOKUPs. Again, I'd urge that you spend your time just getting it right to start with and really try to understand what you're doing. Pivot tables are another use of Excel that people find extremely challenging to get their head around. They're really useful, and we're just literally going to scratch the surface. I'm just going to show you how to set up a pivot table, and you can take this however far you like. So here I've got some data. I'm expanding on the data that we used for our VLOOKUP. I've added an extra column here called salary. So let's say somebody asked us, could you give me a report of the salary of how many people are contract, how many people are full-time, how many people are not employed, hopefully that should be 0, part-time, etc. So we want a nice summary report. Again, you might want to give me a count, or you might want to just tell me what the total salaries are, and I want to see who's earning what as well still. So the way I could do that, I could do it in many ways. I could just do some count ifs or sum ifs. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a pivot table. So I'm going to select the data, and I'm going to go Insert, Pivot Table, select a table or range, and where would you like it to be placed? In a new worksheet? Let's click OK. So that's what we want. Yeah, in a new worksheet, otherwise it's complicated to see. Now, here we're using 2007. It's very similar to 2003. In 2003, you drag this data into the table, whereas here in 2007, we've got these nice boxes that we're going to use. The first thing we probably want, let's pick out the employee surname. So we're going to pick out the employee surname. We're going to add that. Let's just add that here into, we're going to add that into our row labels. So these are all our employee surnames, so we can see them here. Okay, and then we're going to add, okay, well, what are we interested in? Well, we're interested in the status. So who is full-time, who is contract, etc., etc., and what salary do they get? So we can add the status to our column labels. And we can see here we've got contract, full-time, not employed, part-time, and then some total that's going to come. Now that's setting up our table. Okay, so we set up our table. Right now it's the names against the status of employment. We then need some data to analyze against that. And what we're looking for here is, let's say we want the salary. So we want to know what is the salary. We add this here to our data values, or what we can say our sum values. And here we go. Okay, so we've got count of salary. Right now we've got count of salary. What I'd really like is, rather than the count of salary, I want the sum of salary. So what I can do is I can click here and it gives me options. We'll do that again. We'll click here, we'll go value field settings. Well, I actually want the count. So I'll click OK. I actually want the sum. So we'll click OK, click OK here. And we can see that it's given us the amount of salary that each of these people earn. So what we can do is, let's format this up. We can select it here. Let's just select all that. To format, remember, Control-1 to format the cells, and let's just pick currency. It's defaulted to my usual setting. Click OK. So we can see here, right, okay, well, these are all, this is how much we're paying all our contractors. This is how much we're paying our full-time. This is how much we're paying the not employed That's exactly as we hoped. And this is how much we're paying out part-time. Again, this is a very simple demonstration of a pivot table. It's a nice, easy way to summarize our data and group our data. I may wish to see it in a different way. I may wish to add, let's say I'm going to add salary again. Yeah, so I've added salary. This time I'm adding a count of salary. Really what I'm doing is I'm counting how many people are we paying, yeah, in each of the categories. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to field value, I've done count, so I've gone, okay, that's fine. And I just might want to format these cells so that they're not currencies, however, just numbers. So we might go number, we don't want any decimal places. Let's kick it OK. Okay, and I have to do the same here for my bottom of my rows as well. So now it's giving me the salary, the total count. Here, let's just do that. So I'm just using the control key to select multiple cells. Control 1, let's just give it a number, no decimal places. So I can easily see, right, the number of contractors are 4, the number of full-time is 6, the number of not employed are 2, and the number of part-time is 3. The total I pay each of them is also available. The total I pay all of my staff is available as well here. So it's a very simple way to present our information. Again, as I said, you can take these pivot tables even further. Just to summarize, our row labels are the rows and the column labels are the columns. What do you want to compare? What would you like to kind of cross-reference against? And that's the way the pivot table works. Like I said, with pivot tables, we've just covered a very simple overview of how they work. You can take this further.